Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Wonderful. All right, so some of you have kind of gotten some training on IMAP before. Some of you may not know very much, but we're gonna kind of start, I guess, at the beginning, refresh and maybe talk about some things that you guys aren't familiar with already. But I will just preface to say there's a lot of things you can do with IMAP, and certainly I think it's a really valuable tool for these kind of bigger groups that you guys lead with the CWMAs. And so if there's any particular aspects of IMAP that as we talk about it, you want to kind of dive more into and get more information or details, feel free to let me know and we can stop and take the time to make sure we're covering everything and making it as valuable to you as we can. So as you guys probably know, the database iMapInvasives is available online. And so the way that you access it is by going to Pennsylvania iMapInvasives or PA iMapInvasives.org. And there's a login button here that you can click on. And I will go ahead and log in. Oops, try that again. Okay. So IMAP is map-based. Everything that you can do in the program is going to be driven by first starting out at the map, and then you can do all sorts of stuff from there. So you can collect information, you can actually enter data right into the database. You can view information, whether that's data that you have entered yourself, someone else or other people in your organization have entered, or someone else in the state of Pennsylvania has entered information that might be useful or valuable to you. And there's lots of tools and buttons here that you can click on. So I want to first start by showing you those things, and then we can jump into actually creating some records and viewing them. And we'll also talk about some mobile apps and how to use those as well. So if you start out over on the left side of the screen, we have the main menu. And so if you click on that, you can see lots of options show up here, and I can show you a few of these that would be most beneficial for you guys to know about. So if you click on the jurisdiction species list, that will actually show you all of the species that we are currently tracking in Pennsylvania. So all of these species are ones that you can enter data for. We have over 400 species that we're currently tracking, and we do add to that list from time to time, either based on suggestions that we get from different people, or if we get a new data set that has a species that's new that we would need to add, we'll go ahead and add that to our track species list. Projects are something that a lot of people find very useful and valuable for their work. It's essentially a way to group a set of data together so that it's really easy to query for later on in the database. So we have had projects set up by CWMAs before. For example, maybe you're surveying in a particular location during a particular year, and you want to keep that data kind of separate so you can easily look at it later on. You can create a project for that. You would then add members or different people that could contribute data to that project, and would also be able to filter for that data in IMAP as well. So it's a nice way to kind of keep your data sort of private, and not everyone can tag to that particular project unless you want them to be able to do that. The nice thing about projects is that you don't need my help for it. You can go in, you can set up a project on your own, give it a name, give it a short description of what it's all about, add the members that you want to be collecting or viewing that data, and you can do that on your own, all without any administrative help. So a lot of times I will come in and see there's a lot more new projects that were in here that I didn't know about. And that's great, because that just shows that people are using that functionality. So that's projects. We also have organizations in here. So this is just a way to affiliate your user profile with your organization that you're with. And when you sign up for a user account, this is something that's really important to do, so that when you're collecting information, your affiliated organization then shows up with any of your records. And so even though it's not critical, we don't absolutely need people to have their organization listed in their user profile. It is very helpful because that helps us to kind of get to know some folks better, who they are working or affiliated with. People can have multiple organizations that they're with. So Emily, I'll use you as an example. So you could have Potter County Conservation District in your profile. You could also have a APIPMA in your profile as well as 2 organizations that you're a part of. And then you would just choose the primary organization, the one that you would want to have show up with any records that you enter. So that's what the organizations are all about. You also have where it says your account. This is your user profile that you can go in and update as you would like to. Again, this is helpful for administrators to have the most up-to-date information in here so that we know how best to contact you. This is where you would have a list of all of the projects that you are a part of, also the organizations that you're affiliated with, and then down here is some other jurisdictional privileges as well. So again, good to have this filled in and up to date as much as possible. And the other thing that I probably won't have a ton of time to talk about today, but I do want to make sure I mention it, are email alerts. This is such a cool part about IMAP. I cannot talk about this enough. So whenever we get new information that gets confirmed in iMapInvasives, if you or someone else has an email alert set up that triggers or matches the criteria of a certain species that just got confirmed, you will get a notification about that record if you have it set up that way in your alert. So rather than going into IMAP, once a week or however often to go in and check if there's any useful information to you, if there's something that you kind of want to keep tabs on, setting up an email alert is a really good way to do that. So for example, if you are really interested in goats rue data in Potter County, again, I'm just kind of throwing some things out here, you could set up an alert that told you when we got newly confirmed goats rue data in Potter County. You can be even more specific. You could say, I only want to know about data that's being entered by people in my CWMA. You could do that. You can include more of a broad geographic area if you wanted to know about multiple counties, or if you didn't care where the species was being found and you wanted to know about goats rue data anywhere in Pennsylvania. So you can go in and customize these alerts to however you want them to be. And you can choose how often you would get notified, whether that be immediately, within a few days or a week, I forget the settings. But again, it's all in here and you can choose how to customize it however you want. So it's a really nice way, again, thinking that you guys coming from these kind of larger group settings, that you can stay up to date on what's happening and who's reporting information, again, because that can be really helpful to kind of keep everyone on the same page. Okay, any questions about anything that I went through so far? I want to make sure I'm stopping and pausing here in case you guys have any questions.
Amy, I have a question. Can you just explain what you meant? I guess I'm backtracking a little bit, but listing jurisdictions. What does that mean?
So did you mean the jurisdiction species list?
Yeah.
Yes. So the jurisdiction species list, well, it's kind of a fancy name for state or province, because sometimes we have some provinces that are also part of the IMAP network as well, but we call ourselves jurisdictions. So we're in the jurisdiction of Pennsylvania. So this list is specific to all the species that are currently tracked in the Pennsylvania iMapInvasives program. Does that answer your question? Okay, awesome. Jim, John Mark, any other questions at this time?
No.
Okay. All right, I'm going to go back out to the map and we can, I'm going to show you some things here on the map as well. Okay, so over on the left-hand side, right underneath the menu, we have some zoom tools. So you can either zoom if you have like the little wheel on your mouse, or you can use these plus and minuses to zoom on your map. And I guess I should back up and just say, so the reason that the map looks the way it does right now, we have these orange hexagons. Those hexagons represent data that's been mapped in each of these particular areas. And over the course of many years, we've had jurisdictions, again, that fancy term, states and provinces, that have been active, that have had iMapInvasives programs. So we do have several that are also active right now, in addition to Pennsylvania. It's not just us. We have Saskatchewan up in Canada. We have Oregon. We have Arizona, Pennsylvania, of course, New York, and Maine. We've also had in the past, Florida, West Virginia, Virginia, Vermont, and I may be missing one other one. We also got the Maritimes that actually just joined recently as well. They just started up an IMAP program there too. That doesn't really affect you guys too much, just to understand that that's why the map looks the way that it does. And over here on the right-hand side, this helps you to kind of better understand the symbology that you're seeing on the map. So the larger the circles or the hexagons represents the larger amount of data. And I'll show you too as we go through, but the map is dynamic, meaning that as you zoom in closer on the map, the data points will start to look different, that you can really hone in on specific points or polygons or lines, and the legend will adapt to that. So it will tell you exactly what you're looking at. So if you're ever confused about what you're looking at on the map, make sure that you're looking at your legend, and that will help to hopefully clear things up a little bit. So again, going back over to the left-hand side, so the home, if I zoom in on the map, okay, so I get to a certain point here and I want to go back out to that default map view, all I have to do is click on home and it'll bring me right back out. So that's kind of an easy way to get back to square one. If you click on your crosshairs, that will identify where you are right now. So this is saying I'm working from home right now because I'm working at my home office. So that's pinpointing my location. So that's what the crosshairs does. And then we also have this magnifying glass. So that will allow you to either enter an address, a place name, or GPS coordinates, and that will hone you in right on the map, whatever you choose. So I'm just going to type in the address of our office just to show you guys what that looks like. And that'll take me right there. I'm just going to change the map over here so we can see that a little bit better. So this is our office in Pittsburgh. Okay, so I kind of gave away the next part. So there's, again, being map-based, you have the option of looking at different base maps when you're looking at information. It can be really helpful sometimes to have that topographic map, but I often find that when you're honing in, you really want to get a good sense of where you are. That satellite view can be really, really helpful. For example, sometimes a water body won't show up on a topographic map, whereas it will on a satellite. So these are the two that I primarily use a good bit, but there is other types of base maps that you can choose from over here, and you can change those out however you want to, as you like. So there's different colors here. There's a light gray, there's a dark gray. Sometimes the data will look better or be easier to see depending on what your base map is. So that's something to think about. So before I talk about the rest of these layers over here, I do want to mention up here these buttons. So these buttons are kind of the ways to drive the map and to do different tasks within IMAP. So if you click on Create Record, and we'll go through this here in a little bit, this is what you would click on in order to actually go ahead and create data in the online database itself. And here you have the options to presence, treatment, or not detected. The multi-record searched area is essentially a way to enter any of these three all at the same time, rather than going back out and entering a presence and then entering a not detected. You can enter it all at the same time, so it saves you a little bit of time. The go to record button, I use this all the time, but I don't know if it's as helpful for other people. But if you know the record ID number for a certain presence or not detected or treatment, you can enter that record ID number here and it'll take you right to that point on the map. You want to make sure where it says type, right now it's defaulted to presence. You want to make sure that if you're looking at a not detected record, for example, that you go through and you actually make sure you're selecting that not detected. Same thing for treatment and searched area. Filter is something that you guys will definitely want to use. This is how you get the map to show you what you want to see when you're viewing species distributions. So we do have a lot of different tabs up here at the top of the filter records tool. I'm just clicking through these so you can just kind of get a general sense of them. The general one is probably the one you'll use the most. This is where you can filter by species. So you can either type in whatever you want, or you can kind of scroll through the list as well. And you can select multiple species here too. You're not limited to just looking at one species at a time. So that can be really helpful. You can customize your filter by looking at many different things. You're not limited to just one of these categories. So say I'm interested, I want to look at autumn olive and hydrilla data that's only been entered by Jim Zog. Okay, so that's an example that I want to have that type of filter. So you could do that. You could also use the species type dropdown down here. Oops, it looks like my filter is freezing on me for whatever reason. Anyway, we'll skip over that for now. So you can filter on species type. You can do growth habit, habitat type, kingdom, and genus. You can also filter based on dates. So if you're only interested in, for example, data that was found last year, you're only looking at more recent data, you can combine your species search with records found after and before. You can also search for records that were found by people in a specific organization. Again, thinking back to maybe only wanting to know what's happening in SIPMA or in APIPMA, you can do that. That's only if someone has actually had their their record tied to that organization. So that's something to make sure you're keeping in mind. Again, here's where you would search for project. If you chose to set up a project, you would be able to query for that project here. And then also jurisdiction, if you're only interested in looking at data in Pennsylvania, you would make sure that you would want to type in Pennsylvania here. You can combine any of what you've selected here with anything else on these other tabs. So it can be kind of a lot, but just know that you're not limited is essentially kind of the key takeaway here. So for example, I use this a good bit, records that have a photo. So sometimes I really need a record to have a photo, and if it doesn't, I'm not concerned about it. So you could just say yes to that here. We have other tabs up here. I would encourage you guys to kind of check those out and play with them. But when you're ready to actually run your filter, you would say apply filter down here, and that will run that filter for you. Now keep in mind, and this is something that I know can be very confusing for people sometimes, think of IMAP as a GIS where not everything is always going to turn on unless you tell it to. So if I go over here to the layers on off, it will automatically turn on our confirmed data layer, which is what most people would be interested in. But the other thing that it doesn't turn on, but is equally important, is our approximate data layer. So approximate data is also essentially confirmed data. It's just that the geography or the map location is not specific to a certain area like a confirmed point would be. It's approximate to, say, a water body or a town, or maybe it's been slightly mismapped, like it's in the middle of a road and I can tell that that's not right. It should have been mapped, 15 feet to the right in the, on a roadside or something like that. So the approximate data is still presence information, and you do want to make sure that when you're running your queries, you are turning that on as well. If you're only interested in looking at, say, absence information or in combination with your presence information, you just can go ahead and turn that layer on, and that will turn on too. So you can do that for any of these. The treatment information, also something that people don't maybe always realize is anytime a record gets entered into IMAP, it can automatically be viewable to anyone. And that would be able to be viewed as an unconfirmed data record. And essentially that is saying that that record has not been vetted by an expert yet. That's why it's still listed as unconfirmed. So once an expert, and we partner with a lot of different people across the state, and Brian is one of our confirmers as well. He does a really good work on that. That will then become either a confirmed point or an approximate point, depending on the map location. So again, anytime something gets entered into IMAP, whether you enter it through the online database or you use a mobile app, it will go into IMAP as an unconfirmed record, and then it will be kind of waiting in the wings until an expert takes a look at it. Okay, I'm going to stop again and ask if there's any questions at this point. Okay, very good. So that's your layers. Again, keep in mind, think of IMAP as GIS. You've got to make sure you're turning on all the layers that you want in order for the data to show up appropriately. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in on the map. So we've got a lot going on here. I'm going to turn on my legend so you guys know what we're looking at here. So anything that's showing up that's pink is our unconfirmed data. Anything that's showing up that's blue is our approximate data. And anything that's showing up as yellow is our not detected or absence information. Everything else that you see, the orange hexagons, that is confirmed information. And as we zoom in farther on the map, the reason why it's drawing this way is because it would really slow down the map if it drew every single one of those confirmed points on the map from this scale. It would take a lot for the map and it would be pretty slow. But as we zoom in, I'm going to zoom in up here. You're going to notice that those orange hexagons will start to disappear and it will be replaced with these green dots or polygons or lines. And that is representing our confirmed information. So again, just kind of wheeling in and out on my mouse right now just to show you the difference. So here we've got the orange hexagons. Here we've got those specific point locations for that confirmed data. Okay, so I'm seeing information on the map. I remember that I did a filter for some information here for certain species, but what am I actually looking at? I can see there's dots on the map, but what am I looking at? So a pretty cool tool that we have in IMAP is called Identify Measure. I use this all the time. It's super handy. Think of it as a lasso that you're gathering the data that you're most interested in and you're learning more about it. So if I click on Identify Measure, and then a little pop-up window will show up here at the bottom. If I click on area, I can then draw a polygon around a certain set of data that I want to learn more about. I'm just clicking on the map right now, that's all I'm doing. Double click to finish drawing your polygon. And then there's a window with a button that says, see what's here. And if I click on that, that will then bring up a table at the bottom of my screen that's going to give me more information about what those points are that I just put in my little lasso. There is different tabs here that you want to make sure that you notice are here because we have both confirmed data and the yellow or that not detected information as well. So you can switch back and forth between those tabs to see what you're looking at. So it's going to give you information about not only the species that is found there, but also when it was mapped, so the observation date, who mapped it, who was the observer, and if they have their organization name listed, that will also show up as well. You can then click on any one of these green buttons that says details. So I'm just going to choose this one. And that will then bring up the specific record and it will give you more information about it. So we can see here's the map location. Here is a photo that was taken for it. You can actually click on it and it will enlarge it so you can get a closer look at it. If there's more than one, you'll notice that more than one will show up here. Sometimes people will include comments in their record. And there's a lot of other fields here too that you can see not listed, not listed, not listed. But all of this information is available to be entered if someone would want to enter it. This is true for all of the record types. Right now, we're just looking at a presence record, but not detected and treatment all have their own specific fields that you can fill in as well. And sometimes you can be very detailed. You don't have to be. You can be fairly simple in the records that you create, but it does give you the option to really kind of dive in and give as much information as you want to. Here we can see that this particular record is tagged to a project. So if I queried on this project, it would bring up this record and any other records that are associated with it. Down here at the bottom, we can see information on that this record was indeed confirmed and who was the person that confirmed it. So that's really good information to have as well. So this is just kind of an overview of our presence record right here. I can go ahead and click on a not detected record and show you what that looks like. It's a little bit less detailed, more than as compared to a presence record. Here, though, we can actually see that this record, in addition to not detecting hydrilla, you can see that several other species were looked for and not found as well. And that's the nice thing, again, about IMAP is you can include multiple species that you looked for, whether that's presence or not detected. In this case, it's just a not detected record. but you can include multiple species in there to say, I looked for hydrilla, frogbit, milfoil, fanwort, didn't find any of it. So that's all together in the same record. You can click on see more, and that will open up the record, and you can look at more details here. Okay, I'm going to stop again. Any questions about any of that? Okay. All right, so I will go back out now. And I want to show you guys the export and report options here. So this can be really handy. So if you want to pull data out, whether that's for GIS purposes, maybe you want to pull data for making a report, like a grant report or something like that, you can filter the map for whatever data would be most applicable to you. And then you have different ways that you can export that data, whether that's a CSV, or if you want to do GISing, we have the option to pull it out as a geodatabase or a shapefile. So keep in mind, right now, the data that I'm going to pull out is limited to what I see right here on my screen. So if I zoom out, that will change the data that I will actually be able to export. But if I choose, you can also use a custom boundary to choose what data you want. So maybe I only want to know about, like these points right here. I could draw a polygon around those records and only, pull out data for those records. But if you're wanting to know everything that you see here on your screen, you want to make sure that you zoom out to the point that you see everything that you want to see, and then you can export that information. So that can be really handy, again, depending on your purposes. Also, as you see here, it's called export, but also report. So here, if we switch it over to report, this is going to give you the option to run 4 different reports that we have. And I'm just going to show you one of them to kind of give you an example of what I mean by reports here. This one I use actually very frequently. I really like it. It's called Species List by Geography. So this will essentially tell you what species are found in the geography that you choose, whether that's the whole state, a county, a particular conservation land, like a state forest, for example. So you can, be very specific about the data that you're interested in. Now, keep in mind, I've got the map filtered for only a few species. So the data that's going to show up in my report is going to be based on what I have the map filtered to currently. So say, for example, I want to know what is found in Potter County. So I'm going to go ahead and say geography type, county, and I'm going to click on the map. Actually, I'm going to turn my layers on so I know which county is Potter County. Here we go. Okay, I'm going to zoom in here. Okay, Emily, help me out here. There we go. I knew it was around here. All right, so I'm going to click on the map, and it's going to highlight Potter County for me. And if you want, which can be helpful sometimes, you can actually make a buffer around the county. So I could say, I want to know, a mile outside of the county. So you can do that as well. And then if you just click on next and say run report, that's going to generate that report for you based on the data that you have filtered on the map currently. Now, if you wanted to get a whole list of all the species that have been found in a particular geography, you can do that by just not filtering the map for the species that we have filtered. So I can say, go ahead and view the report, and this is going to give me that information. Again, I've got just the species filter there. So I think maybe a better way to do this is just to unfilter. So I'm going to clear my filter. And then we'll do our report again the same way that I just did it. So we'll say species list by geography, define or select the boundary area, turn on my counties. Use existing geography, county. Okay, here we go. Oh, Tioga, got my wrong one, sorry. All right, well, we'll just go for that for now. So we'll go ahead and say run report. And then that will generate, and we can get a full list of all the species that have been found in that county. So like I said, you can be very specific on what geography you want. It doesn't have to be the whole county. It could be more specific. It could be a particular water body. It could be a particular forest land, whatever would be something you'd want to learn more about. Okay, any questions about that?
I have a maybe hard question. Would there be any way, like, have you seen people sort of like delineate a watershed, and you just like sort of drew your like area of interest previously? Like,
So
could you do
I
that?
believe, yes. So well, let me just close this out because it is taking a little bit of time to do. So one of our layers that we have over here in our geographic section is our regional, oh, here we go. That is that right there. I'll come back to that in a second because I want to answer your question, Emily. So the regional management partnerships are essentially the CWMAs that we have in Pennsylvania. So you can actually see an outline of APIPMA and SIPMA here. And I think that might be getting at what you were hoping for. Am I right, Emily? Or are you really only interested in watershed just for the watershed?
So I guess that was just mostly out of curiosity. It's good to know that I can, the regional management partnerships, I guess, layer is there, but I'm just thinking like, if we had a TU chapter or a watershed association that get interested in, I guess, generating a map of that type, just for let's say like the Allegheny watershed in Potter County or something like that.
Right.
But
that hydro basins layer is similar to that, but it's kind of smaller units than what would be a full watershed.
I think it's either a HUC 8. Maybe this is a HUC 8 layer, I think. I can't remember.
It might be. That tends to be what is used. So obviously you have a lot more partitions than like the full Allegheny watershed.
Right.
Or even more than like full French Creek watershed or something like that.
Right, yeah, you have that option. Again, there's lots of different layers here. I'm just going to turn some of these on and off so that you see what they look like. So we have the states, provinces layer. We have the county layer. We have water bodies, which that one might take a little while to turn on here. There we go. Then we have conservation lands. Okay, and I can just zoom in so you can kind of see what we're looking at here. Then we have the USGS topographic quads. And then what I just showed you, the regional management partnerships. It's called that because that's the term that they use in New York for their CWMAs, essentially. That's why it's called that. We looked at the hydro basins, countries, then we have local municipal boundaries. This one's, pretty specific, pretty small. And then this MOBI, the map of biodiversity importance, is something that NatureServe put together. So you can play with that if you're interested in that as well. So yeah, in thinking about those layers, when you're running a report, I'm going to go back here, say species list by geography. And I'm going to say define or select a boundary, use existing geography. And then I'm going to go down to regional management partnership. I can then click on the map where APIPMA is. You can again do a buffer if you want to. And then you can run that report. Now I don't have any data turned on right now and it would yell at me. Actually, I'll show you what it looks like when it yells at you. So it says no layers are turned on for the report. So it's saying nothing's going to show up because you don't have anything turned on. So I want to make sure that I'm turning on at least my confirmed and approximate data. And then your report will run after you have the information turned on. So that'll give you a snapshot of what's been found in your CWMA just by doing that report. You could also do it by using the identify measure tool that I showed you earlier, but this is sort of a cleaner way to do it, I guess, is how I would explain it. And sometimes that just takes a little bit of time to generate, so that's why it's taken a little while. Okay, any other questions at this point? Okay. All right, so I kind of jumped the gun over here, so I guess I'll kind of back up a little bit and show you what we've got over here as well. So I showed you guys the base maps. This add layer from URL, it's I don't think a lot of people use it, but it is here in case you want to. So you can essentially grab another map or feature service that's available, like from PASDA, for example. And you could throw in, for example, a map of all of the state game lands. You could put that right into IMAP if you grab the correct URL from PASDA. You could throw in, I think I grabbed a layer that showed like national parks, you know, whatever you want. There's so many different, you know, public maps out there that's available. And you can put that in here and use that as like a reference layer when you're looking at, you know, the data in IMAP. So I don't know what layers would be most useful for you guys, or if anything comes to mind, but just think of that as a way to add kind of an extra reference to you when you're looking at data that might be helpful. This add distribution layer, this can be really handy. So right now you can see the map is like, it's really crazy, right? There's a lot going on here. So I'm going to go back up to my filter, and Emily, give me a species that I should look up.
How about mile a minute?
Okay, we'll do mile a minute. So I'm going to filter the map just from mile a minute in Pennsylvania. Okay, so here's my map. I could turn on my county layer if I felt like it, and that would give me some information here. It's still kind of hard to read. It's not really easy to see. If I wanted to get a good idea of all the counties that are being impacted by mile a minute, it's sort of hard to do. So this add distribution layer is really cool because I can choose a geography. So for example, I'm going to keep it selected to the county district, turn on approximate data and say show the distribution layer. And that's going to give me a map that shows me the county distribution for mile a minute. So that can be really handy because, as I mentioned before, without it, it's just really not easy to, you know, see what's going on that map. So that's an easy way to get a, you know, quick distribution or an understanding of the distribution for a different species. You can do that for other different layers that we have here as well. So I could choose, you know, conservation lands, for example, say show distribution layer, and that will then pop up the different conservation lands where mile a minute has been found. So you can really customize that however you want to. We've looked at the layers on off. Again, think of that as your GIS. These are the layers and the information that you want to have showing up on your map. So you can have that unconfirmed, not detected, and treatment information show up as well. We also recently have iNaturalist data that's available in IMAP as well. Keep in mind, this layer is only the most recent 5 years worth of data from iNaturalist. So older data is not going to be in this layer that's being pulled from iNaturalist. It's only going to be the most recent 5 years. But that still can be really valuable. I mean, I look at iNaturalist all the time. I know Brian uses iNaturalist all the time to kind of get a better reference point for certain species distributions. And that can maybe help inform management efforts or future surveys or mapping, whatever you might want to be doing. So if you want to look at iNaturalist, all you have to do is turn that layer on as well. And I can actually just turn off some of the other data that I have and maybe even change my base map so I can see it a little bit better. And here we can see, if I go down to my legend, that anything that is a pink diamond is going to be representing iNaturalist data. So because we still have the map filtered for mile a minute, that's what's showing up right here. This is only mile a minute data. So you could filter the map for other species. You could, again, consider, you know, if you only wanted to look at even more recent data, like just from last year, you could do the date portion of the filter, however you wanted to do that. So again, think of this as your, you know, your tool of how you're wanting the map to show up. And then these are the information as far as what types of data you want to have appear. Okay, we also have confidential data. I think I may have mentioned this to you guys before. So Confidential data is essentially data that is hidden from the from view from the general public, unless someone has been given special confidential viewing privileges, which we do give to certain people, generally 1 or 2 at the most per organization. If you have confidential data viewing privileges, you actually can view any data in IMAP that's confidential, not just your own. And so we do try to be really careful about who we give those privileges to. For obvious reasons, we want to make sure that that data isn't, being shared out with anyone else. If we find that it is, that person would lose those confidential data viewing privileges. But sometimes people have the need to have their data be confidential, whether it might be a treatment record that you don't want to have be viewable to the public. There can be multiple reasons and scenarios why that might be the case. So that is the option. Right now, we do have at least 3 species, like the whole species, in IMAP that is listed as confidential. And that is spotted lanternfly, feral swine, and Asian longhorn beetle. Asian longhorn beetle is not a species we have in Pennsylvania that we know of and hope that we never do, but it is a very highly regulated species. And so that's why it would be listed as confidential if we had data for that species in Pennsylvania. But obviously spotted lanternfly, highly regulated species right now. Feral swine is another species that the Game Commission does not want people hunting that species, because if they do, it could move the populations around to other parts of the state. And that would be really bad, because that would essentially spread those species to other areas where they might not be currently. So they don't want to share out any information for that species to the general public. And to be honest, we don't even have any data for feral swine right now, but if we did, it would be listed as confidential. But you have the ability to list any record that you want, like by itself, to be confidential. But you would need those confidential data viewing privileges in order to actually see it once it's listed as confidential. Any questions about confidential data? Okay. So I'm going to transition over. Brian, I'm going to give you the reins here. Do you want to talk a little bit more about Survey 123? And if you want to, I don't know if you have the Let's View on your work computer, but if you wanted to share your screen from your phone, you could feel free to do that. So I'm going to stop sharing. And Brian, if you want to share your screen, you can go ahead and do that, or you can just talk about it too if you want to.
Yeah, I did not have that set up.
Sorry, I should have mentioned it to you before.
Yeah, but that's all right. So Survey 123 is one of the tools that we have for recording data in the field. It is an Esri based product, similar to how the IMAP web service is also Esri GIS based. And Survey 123 is a form-centric data collection tool where you collect data points on invasive species presences, not detected records, and even treatment data that you're observing out in the field. And all of that is based on a searched area that you draw over the map. So you draw a searched area that is kind of your survey area. And then within that, you get to add, presence data as points, lines, or polygons. And then you can do the same with not detected records and treatment data as well. And it lets you take treatment data in the form of chemical applications or mechanical applications, or even introductions of biological control at a gist. So it's really useful if you're taking more detailed data than what you'd want to, record with like a mobile phone device like iNaturalist or the iMapInvasives mobile device. And if I was ready to talk about that, I could show you more. But I know we do have some typed up guides and videos as well that I'm sure Amy will pass along to you that go in depth on how to use Survey 123.
Yeah, I mentioned before, there is some videos that are available on YouTube. Brian put together a really great video on the ins and outs of using Survey 123, and I put together a video on the classic mobile app. And I would say, and Brian, go ahead and fill in more as details as you want to. I would say in general, the classic mobile app is something that like a community scientist really would prefer to use. It's very simple. Not a lot to do. You can create a record in under a minute, kind of thing. The Survey 123 can also be fairly simplistic to use, but it does give you the option to be more detailed in the kind of data that you're gathering. You can draw polygons, whereas the classic mobile app is limited to just point data. So as natural resource managers, it gives you those options to collect fairly detailed information in the field, and then take that back once you are back in an area with Wi-Fi and upload your data into IMAP that way.
Mhm. Yeah, like Amy said, you don't need to have any, sustained connection to the internet in order to use it. Same with the classic app, actually. And Victoria, I do see your question. You actually don't need an ArcGIS account to use Survey 123. There is a way you can go and download the iMapInvasives survey form and use it without having an Esri account. I explained that in the video tutorial that I put together. And the New York iMapInvasives program also has a tutorial that explains how to get that set up as well.
Okay, very cool. Thank you. Thank
Yep.
you for however you made me unmute.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I wasn't paying attention to the attendee list until Brian said you were here. That was my fault. So
No, you're fine. That's okay. I was like, I don't see the unmute button. I can't
I'm glad
do
that
it.
you were able to join us, Victoria. Victoria, since I'm not sure when you had a chance to join, did you have any other questions about anything we talked about so far?
I did, but Brian answered it in the Q&A. So
Okay,
we're good.
wonderful, wonderful. Brian is my partner in crime here. I definitely couldn't do as good of a job without him. So I
No,
appreciate
you'd
help
still do
there.
great. Don't worry.
And then I'm happy to show you guys the classic mobile app too. I know we have a little bit of time here, but before I jump into that, is there anything specific to you guys, your projects going on within your respective CWMAs that you want to kind of talk a little bit more about, and how IMAP can maybe be a part of that? I really want to make sure I make time for you guys and give you the opportunity to, kind of fill us in on what you're doing and how maybe IMAP can help you in that work.
I can't think of anything in particular right now, but I think that's mostly because Emily and I are kind of working on resuscitating APIPMA. So, I mean, that's kind of like the whole paperwork end versus the field stuff is taking precedence right now. So, I imagine once we get more into, when next spring rolls around and we're in the field more and we start doing more treatments and IDs and, actually being able to use and map all of this stuff, that we'll probably have more questions that we'll reach out to you about. But I think really just getting a basic handle on how to use the software available has been beneficial.
Okay, wonderful. Wonderful.
think-
Jim, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think the maps that we can generate is definitely gonna help both me and Victoria out. And then also Jim and I have had the discussion about, like we need to apply for stuff, lots of stuff. So to have that kind of like in our toolkit will be great.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought of that, but being able to generate maps and pull CSV data and have maps for, grant applications to say like, hi, we need X amount of dollars to treat whatever, and here's its presence, in our counties or in our region or in this watershed or whatever. Yeah, that's super useful.
And on the other end of that, as far as, getting grants, if you were awarded a grant, then there's a grant report that goes with that. And so IMAP, again, can be really handy because you could, if you created a project, for example, for that particular grant, and all of your data was tagged under that grant, you could easily pull a map and say, here's what we did. Here's all the great stuff that we found, we surveyed for, we treated, whatever it is. And that can be pulled directly from IMAP as long as everyone is contributing their information that way. So it can really take a lot of work off of your shoulders, essentially. Jim and John Mark, I want to make sure I give an opportunity for you guys to talk here as well. Oh, you're still on mute, Jim.
John Mark had to leave a few minutes early, so
Okay.
I guess he didn't turn his computer off or log
Oh,
out.
he's like
Caught
ghosting
the
our
hard part
webinar
of
here.
the presentation. iMapInvasives, it's a great database. It's really helpful to be able to look at. I feel like with my job, I'm pulled in a lot of different directions, And this is a real small part of it, even though it's something that is near and dear to my heart. So I don't have time to use it as much as I would like to.
Mhm.
And that, the more it's used by different people, the more valuable it is, because the more data it has. So
Right.
that's kind of the situation I'm in, but
Sure.
I find it extremely beneficial to be able to search and see what other people are finding out there. And there's sites that populations I wasn't even aware of, that I know of because of IMAP.
Right. Yeah, that's an excellent point, Jim. Thanks for bringing that up. So I kind of forgot to mention that, but yeah, it can be really valuable because there may be a species or multiple species that are in your interest based on location or, whatever the reason, that maybe you have no idea is there, and so if you just do some of the simple filters to see, what's already out there, that could impact potentially what you are using your money for to manage, if you had a grant to do management or something. So you have to always kind of think outside the box that this is a statewide database. You guys are obviously going to be participants, in using it in some way. A lot of other people are using it too. And it's sort of the wisdom of the crowd is how I like to think of it, where you're gathering all this data together from multiple different entities who don't always have connections to each other. And yet you can build on what they are including in the database and use that in the specific work that you guys are doing. There was another thought that I had, and it was a good one, and now it's totally eluded me. Hopefully it'll come back here in a second. Emily, I remember you said you were interested in looking at how to enter data online. Did you want me to go through an example of how to do that, or do you think you'd be more interested in looking at the mobile app instead?
I dived into the mobile app and it seems pretty simple.
Mhm.
You cannot, on the mobile app though, it's just like you can't view a map, correct?
Correct. Yep. It's
It's
just
just,
data collection only. Yeah, you can't
okay.
view data with it. You have to actually get in the online database to do
Mhm.
that.
Mhm. Yeah, I did try to upload kind of like, a dummy post there and like on my desktop. So I think I'm good for now.
Okay, great.
I do have a question. Do you know if PennDOT utilizes IMAP at all?
Yes, actually. So I believe it was some folks in the Northwest. I think it's their District 1, if I'm remembering correctly. Cheryl Weimer is the name that comes to my mind. She had some folks that she was working with that they went out and surveyed along I-79 and another kind of big highway for knotweed and Phragmites specifically, and they entered all of that data in IMAP. So actually, if I refresh my map here, I can bring it up and show you again, but it's like a solid line of dots along the highway, and it's from PennDOT.
So that's like my big hurdle here is, I mean, we were issued like a, I don't know, countywide permit to spray wherever we want in the right of way, or organize whatever we want in the right of way, but I don't want to waste my energy on things that maybe they've already sprayed, or like I'm not sure if you're aware and can share of any, like, do they share out the history of what they do, like each district, what they do year to year, or
So,
what?
and you're referring to treatment information, I'm assuming.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So I know that they've entered presence information. I am not aware that they have entered treatment, but again, I don't know. I mean, maybe if I just did a quick filter and looked under PennDOT, that
Mhm.
might surprise me. So that would be a way to figure it out fairly quickly if someone had entered any treatment data that was associated with PennDOT. I know that in general, when you're looking at the 3 different data types, presence, not detected, and treatment, treatment is the least often entered piece of information. And it's sort of funny because when you think about it, it's almost the most important one. I mean, of course, presence, you need the presence then to have the treatment. But if we don't recognize the work that's happening with some of these species, and you're giving a perfect example of, PennDOT spraying along the right of ways, we really have no idea what people are doing unless it's word of mouth communication, or it's someone that or you heard from someone else. But that can get to be whispers down the lane kind of thing, that you don't always get the right message, or it was like last year instead of 5 years ago, or whatever it ends up being. But when it's documented, I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here, but it's like when you document it here in this central location, anyone has access to it, and you can answer your question just as quick as you asked it, essentially. So it is really valuable. And I know, one of the biggest things that I hear people say when we talk about IMAP, and I totally get this. I'm not going to say that this isn't a valid point. People don't have a lot of time. They're super busy with other things, and they say, I just don't have time to do data entry. And that's why we aren't putting in our treatment data, for example. And, I don't have a good answer to, combat that issue. It's just, if this is something that you want to do and you see the value in it, you just have to make some time, and if it's a grant, maybe you write into the grant the data part of using IMAP. So you're making sure that, there's money to cover time to make sure that you can actually do that aspect of your project. But I get it, goodness knows Brian can, say all the things that I ask for his help because I don't have the time to do some things. I'm right there with everybody else. But it is really valuable. And so I try to carve out some time to do different data entry projects that we have, because that's how we continue to build the database and how people then can really get a lot of value from it, is we have that good information there.
Yeah, Emily, I think I'm going to answer, I guess, on the PennDOT question. I think they're using a subcontractor. So I think like their subcontractors, as I've seen, it's more of a brush spray program. So unless, I don't think they're entering the treatment data, but if we, coordinate with them that flag the site and then, their brush spray contractor sprayed it, we could enter the data and say it was their subcontractor. But, or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there is a staff person now and then that follows up and says, all right, they treated this. But usually I think it's just the spray truck driving up and down the road and spraying what they see needs sprayed.
I say we just make a visit to Clearfield and knock on their door, because I mean, the person, Mike Heizenreiter, I think is his name. I mean, and I think you directed me his way, Jim. Like I gave him coordinates of everything, like I found surveying, and it's like kind of crickets in return, not to throw him under the bus. I'm sure he's a busy guy, but like it's so, I don't want to call it defeating, but it's very much like, what's the direction if I don't know, like if all of our sites are along the roadway, just about anyway, and I don't know what's like, how, there's no partnership there, I guess. It's just very like defeating. Yeah, defeating. I'll use the word defeating.
Be honest. Yeah, and maybe that's a conversation, that needs to be had. And I don't want to get my nose too far into things, so I'm just putting that out there as food for thought, but not saying you have to do anything in particular. But again, just, talking about, hey, here's this program. It can be valuable for many different reasons, and that could be one of them, is to just clear up that confusion of what's happening and what needs to happen then afterwards based on what you already know happened. Along those same lines, I do want to mention too, and I think you guys might know this, but we do also accept bulk data loads. So if you have data that was previously collected and is a lot, so say it's like, 100 records, it would take you a while to enter 100 records, manually one at a time. So you can send that to us as long as we have, kind of the basic details, like the species that you found, the date you found it on, the person, the coordinates. We can take that information and actually batch load it into IMAP from the back end of things. Emily, I know you said you had some previous data. So something to keep in mind, if you say, I don't know how many records you had, say you had 20 records, it would be a heck of a lot faster for you to just enter those 20 records yourself and send it to me and batch edit it, because I would then add it into the queue of all my other projects that I have going on, and it might take me a little while to get to it. So depending on how quickly you want to have something added into IMAP, if it's a lot of data, kind of consider, is it enough that, I would need some help with it, or can I just, add 20 records myself in an afternoon or something like that. But I do want to make sure I mention that we do have that capability. We're starting to work right now on being able to batch load polygon data. Previously, it was only point information, but we are slowly, and Brian, you can maybe talk a little bit about this because I know you have a data set on your plate that is polygons. We previously couldn't do that. we are now able, or at least we're working towards being able to do that. So we can batch, I keep wanting to say batch edit, and that's what I'm trying to say, batch load Polygon data as well.
I don't have anything really to add to that. It's a process that I'm learning as well. It's tedious for sure, but it's a lot easier than trying to manually edit it. So it's as we do it more, it'll become a quicker process. Absolutely.
Yeah, I remember, I think it was like a year or so into my position, which I've been here now for almost 10 years. And I added some, I think it was survey data up at like the PIPMA tuning area. And I was drawing all these very neatly done polygons. I was actually really proud of myself, but it took me forever to do it. So it's like, if you already got it in GIS, that's the way to go. So. Okay, well, we are right at 4 o'clock. Happy to stay on a little bit longer, but I don't want to keep you guys. So I'm going to kind of let you guys decide. Do you want me to, or Brian, to show you anything else or talk about anything else, or do you want to wrap things up? Again, this was all recorded, so I'll be sure to send you guys a link to this and links to some other resources as well.
I think I'm good. It was definitely very good to, talk about all of this as a group and, relay things back and forth for a bit. So thank you.
Sure, you're welcome.
Yeah, I don't think I have any more questions. At least at this point, I'm sure that I'll be reaching out to you via email or something if anything arises in the next couple of weeks, but I think I'm good for the most part. Thank you guys.
Okay, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Amy and Brian. It was a good refresher.
Okay, fantastic. And I think I remember what I wanted to say and I saved it for the very end. I know, and Jim, you had mentioned that you don't always get to use IMAP as often as, because you're doing other things. And at least from my perspective, if I don't use a tool very often, I very frequently forget how to use it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to say, if you guys have any questions ever, we are here. Brian is here to take questions. I am here to take questions. It can be, you can think, because it's not, but you can think it's the dumbest question and we will still be happy to answer it for you. So I just want to make sure I say that, because I know sometimes I'm always hesitant to ask a question because I feel like I'm going to be, embarrass myself by asking it. You're not going to embarrass yourself and you're not going to make us mad. Please feel free to reach out anytime. That's what we're here for.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate
All right,
that.
well, I will wrap things up. Thank you guys for taking the time, and I'm sure we'll be in touch again soon.
Have a good
Have a nice
afternoon.
evening.
All right, you too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.